Hi, I'm Stathis, your host. Before we jump in this episode, let me introduce DevRelX. DevRelX is a hub for developer marketing and DevRel professionals. Stay home while DevRelX brings you rich content to boost your DevRel game. Access developer population insights, news, job openings, and more. Discover how to empower developers and grow communities at democratize.com. Today's episode will start with a quote from our guest.
The API mindset is really how I can make my piece of software, my program, my technology, reused by the many at zero cost of implementation.
Hi, welcome to a new episode of Under the Hood of Developer Marketing, our Slash Data podcast devoted to developer marketing and relations. I'm Stathis, your host. Our guest today is a very busy man with a lot of passion for what he does. No other than Mehdi Medjaoui, who is an author, European Commission expert, and founder of APIdays, .io, GDPR.dev, and yes, more. Mehdi, welcome to the show.
Hi, well, thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be participating to your show and talking about APIs in developer marketing.
Yes, and we're very happy to have you here. I hope I did not forget something during your intro, but let's better hear it from you. Will you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, I'll try to make it quick, but let's say over the last 10 years, I've been a strong advocate about how APIs can change our complete mindset about doing software and doing business. So for that, I've built one conference called APIdays Conferences that has been held 50 times over the last 8 years in more than 10 countries. And we still do have like an 8 event a year. I also did some companies. I built OAuth.io. It's an API for authorization protocols and social login that was used by more than 50,000 developers that has been acquired in 2017. And now I'm building GDPR.dev. It's open source tools for developers to implement GDPR regulation, but in a programmable way. So not for just legal and lawyers, but now developers can implement the law directly into their code. And lastly, I'm the president of a nonprofit called The Maintainers. It helps open source maintainers to find new ways to make their software more sustainable on the technical side and financial side.
Yeah, definitely a very busy man. So how did you end up in technology and all the way to founding all off at the beginning and then APIdays?
Quick story. So first, my major when I was a student was material engineering. It was not software engineering. I did some computer science, of course, but and I built the first nanotechnology company with one of my professor. And so I really tried to change the world with technology at the time, but mostly with energy. It was hydrogen storage company, right? And after the company stopped 4 years ago, I wanted to build a new kind of called Humankind Wall. It was a monument of the web, right? So it's like, let's say it's a mix between Google Maps and Pinterest, right? So at the time, you were able to pick a case, put a content there, photo, video, and that was a tribute of our generation. And building that Humankind Wall, that was kind of artistic thing, we began to use many APIs, like 30, 40, 50 different APIs that were all different and all like not designed the same way, different protocols, different format in 2011. And I said, oh my God, like APIs are the future of software, the future of automation, the future of our programmable world. But actually, it's not programmable enough. Like they are so different. So we shifted the project to build tooling to help developers to integrate APIs, and building that tooling and making a company out of it and trying to pitch it to companies. We've seen that companies didn't understand software and APIs as we were understanding. So this is why we said, okay, we need to build the tools, but we need also to build the conference. We need to build the event to help decision makers to understand. And this is how all started, like because we just wanted to make some art and build a monument on the web. And finally, we found that we needed to make better APIs for programmable society.
Definitely very interesting, both what you were trying to build and the API barriers you faced, but we'll get deeper into that in a few minutes. So was there a driving force or a role model that led you to technology and where you are today?
Yeah, the main driving force behind all of this was the ability to do more work with less. And all my political engagement and my philosophy thinking and all of this is that, like, how we can free people from, let's say, a constrained work to do like free work, right? And by that, how we do that? We do that by making machine work and software work, right? This is how we can do it today in our society. And so all you can read in all my writing or all my work, always this willingness to help people, to empower people to do more with less, and using software especially to do that. And it can be software, APIs, open source. It can be all the different aspects of my career. But this is really the driving force, enabling people to do more with less. And by doing that, we need to standardize. We need to make things more respect more conventions and make things more interoperable. So like that, with the less work, we can build a lot more, right? And this is all what I've been driving the last 12 years now of all what I've done.
Yeah, that's definitely a noble cause, to work smart, not hard, as they usually say. But yeah, it's been great because this way you can achieve way more at way less time.
Yeah, one of my mentors used to say, it's not a lot of work who pays off, it's good work who pays off. So if we can help people to do good work instead of doing a lot of work, that's a project I'm in.
Yeah, that's something I stand behind too. Was there a habit in your childhood that you still carry to work to life today?
So in my childhood, let's say I've been a quite happy child, and my parents were there. But that's actually what still drives me today from my childhood is exactly what I'm trying to do with the nonprofit event maintainers, right? Because everywhere in our life, we maintain others, and we're maintained by others, right? And in my childhood, my parents actually maintained me, always supported me in all I wanted to do, and actually, so they really maintained by people to maintain others, right? This is really what drives me, and that I try to translate into the nonprofit day maintainers. So it's not only about open source maintenance, right? But it's the fact that we always owe to people who maintained us before, and to maintain now new people, new members of the community that will owe us at some time, but that will maintain other people after. So it's a continuity, and that relies a lot with software. Actually, we build on the software of people before us, so we add what we can, and that will be useful for the people after us, right? And so this maintenance idea is really what has driven me since childhood.
It's a good thing, to pick up in your childhood and keep driving forward.
And people who say I've made myself, I'm a self-made person, I'm a self-made whatever developer, I'm a self-made entrepreneur. They just forgot the one who maintained them to enable them to be who they are, right? And so I try to never forget who maintained me in the past to be who I am today.
Yes, respect is always something to keep in mind, no matter how far you go.
Totally agree with that. Totally agree.
So this getting to know you, it's been great. So now it's time for our insight-driven section called Let's Talk Data. Please pick a graph from devralex.com/trends, and will you tell us why it is important to you and what makes it stand out?
So that was really hard for me to find only one, to pick only one. But
that's good to hear.
Actually, it's really compelling data and really, really interesting. But let's say with all the conference and all the work we've done trying to help big companies to understand software, right, and really understand what's the mindset, right, since the software bring. I just took one, which is the number of people involved in software development in company, right? It's a percentage of developer, about 6,000 people, right, in your devralex.com/trends, and it shows like how many people inside a company are involved directly in software development. And we can see that in average, depending of company who are using DevOps practice or not, but it's between 10 and 14% of people involved in software for company that more than 500 people, right? And it's between 8 and 13 for between 100 and 500, right? And it goes down to between 19 and 23% for company between 11 and 50 people, and up to between around 50% of people of company for 10 or less people, right? And it reminds me something extremely important when Mark Andreessen, the famous entrepreneur and investor in the Silicon Valley, say 2011, software is eating the world, right? When he says that actually companies who understand software so deeply will win, because now software is not just technology, it's a full mindset. And if you build software in a way that the consumer will love, actually he will prefer an application that is well built, well designed, that makes things easy, but maybe that doesn't have all the features that another big brand offers, but that where the experience and the technology is not used in the right way. So Mark Andreessen said, for example, this is why startup can disrupt banks in banking, because they will be so good at software that actually they will have more users, they will learn more, they will have more data, they will iterate faster, and at some point they will be better at banking than banks that are doing it 100 years ago, because banks will just rely on old models, where new startups, software-powered startups, will rely on data. And so this is what also Chris Anderson said in 2008 in an article, this is the end of theory. This is the end of theory. This is the end of theoretical models without data. Now people who have data can sometimes be more right and have better decision-making than people who have the good models. So this is why it's important to have the data. And these software companies, actually, because they have more users and because they're completely data-driven and data-informed, they accumulate a lot more data to make better decisions, even if they don't know the true job and what's behind this. This is why companies like Stripe or Twilio, Stripe has revolutioned the payment world. Twilio has revolutioned the telecommunication world. They were not payment and banking people, the founder of Stripe, and the founder of Twilio was not a telecommunication person, but they were software people. And this is why this graph, I really love it, because it shows that these small companies are a lot more software driven, because almost half of their team is directly involved in software, where companies that more than 500 people are just between 10 and 14% let's say, involved with people directly working in software development. And for the people who have read the Phoenix Project, so the Phoenix Project is the story of, let's say, how a DevOps culture comes into a company, right? It's a great book. It's a fiction book, but talking about DevOps. And actually, I'm trying to not spoil anything, but at some point, they say that in a company, you don't have a mathematic department. You don't have a learning to read department, right? Because doing simple math and reading, the ability to read, has been learned at school, right? But it's not a department. It's not a specific part of the company. Every employee at some point owns reading and owns simple math skills, right? And so they claim that it should be in the future, it should be the same for software culture, at least not software development, but at least software culture, understanding how software works, what are the interactions, what is software delivery, just understanding the culture of software development. And so now it's owned by an IT department. So it's people dedicated to that. But it should not be. It should be the software culture, because of the world we are in, should be spread across the company. Everybody should be trained, and everybody should completely own the software culture, knowing that the product cannot be launched in 1 day or 2 days, knowing that the mythical man month, adding some people to a late project, make it later, right? Because so many times in companies, they don't understand why things are not shipped or why things are shipped that way, because they don't understand the software culture behind this. And so this graph, I like it because it shows that the bigger the company, the less people are involved in software development, at least. And this is why so many small companies are able to disrupt these big companies with product and software and application that have millions of users, right? One last example, but you remember this idea that Instagram had 120 million users with only 14 employees. 14 employees, 120 million users. These guys were understanding software development. These guys were really having and owning software culture. Or WhatsApp, acquired $19 billion with 50 employees, 50, right? And so these companies really were understanding the power of software, and they were small. So these big companies right now, these more than 500 people in your graph, but I would imagine what would be more than 5,000, as long as they don't have a bigger percentage of their people involved in software development, they will be always open to be like disrupted by small commando teams of, let's say, with a high percentage of people involved in software development that will iterate faster and that will little by little eat their rent by building product that people love instead of building product that really do the job. It's better to be used by people than doing the exact job of the industry, what the industry will try to deliver. I can wait features from a great banking app of a startup, but where that really solves my problems and makes it easy, that have all the features of my classic bank app, which I don't even know how to use because it's complicated. So this is why I love this graph.
Yeah, and I have to say I definitely love your interpretation of it. I don't really have any comments here or anything to add. I love how you took it from basing your every decision on actual data, to address specific needs, all the way to tying everything together, saying that there's not a department of mathematics or everyone should own and completely understand what they're doing. And it's true that small startups, let's say, which are more developer focused, the number of people who are working in understand and help build software, how can they disrupt the industry? Yeah, totally agree there. I have to say before we continue that all this data we're talking about, the DevRelX trends page, are based on our developer economic survey, which surveys more than 30,000 developers annually in 165 countries or more. And now, as we speak, the latest wave is live. So anyone who is a developer, whether you're developing just as a hobby, you're a student or a professional, you can take the survey at developereconomics.net and you could win cool prizes. And your results will lead to conversations like the one we're having with Mehdi right now, help developers understand the world and the world understand developers. So thank you very much for this interpretation, Mehdi. It was really insightful, which only leads us to want to know more, I think. Definitely me, and I'm sure the listeners too. So will you tell us what is the API mindset?
So to really understand the API mindset, you need to understand where does the word and the acronym API comes from, right? And so let's say I could try to make it quick, but in the 50s, there were the first computer coming out, right? And every time you had to write programs and software like routines for computers, you have to do it on specific pinch card, right? And you actually load this pinch card into the computer to be able to read these programs, right? When there is one computer, it's fine. But when you begin to have 1, 10, 100 computers worldwide, and you want to share and you want to reuse software made by others, you will need now to have software programs, at the time routines or subroutines, as they were calling it, cards. Right? So this is where it comes from. So you begin to want to reuse this software across many different computers. But the problem, they've been designed for one type of computer, right? One type of a specific hardware computer. So in 1968, they begin to think about this idea of what if we can reuse the same interface for making, let's say, application run the same programs, right? So this is the first time actually where the world is really coined like that. Even in the 50s, 60s, von Neumann and others already thought about this idea, but they were never being able to implement because actually there were no use case directly. There were not enough computers, but they said at some point it will happen. And in 1968, they said that now it's the time, because with the rapidity of development of new hardwares and new computers, right? Now it becomes an obligation to have software interfaces, like application interfaces, that helps the software to be reused on different computers, right? So that's where it really comes from. It comes from the inability to always replicate software to be able to deliver on different clients, right? Or different computer or different client. And you can check now, and even in the last 10 years, the API mindset is really how I can make my piece of software, my program, my technology reused by the many at zero cost of implementation, or diminishing the cost of implementation. And it has many, many implications. It has implication internally, because internally, if I make my software open and reusable by others, which is really, really well documented, people will be able to discover the software, right? If the APIs really explain what's the capability they expose, they will be able to discover and cross-pollinate inside an organization, about capabilities to stop rebuilding the same capabilities, right? In the same way that in the 60s, they were rebuilding computers. But now I have different departments. Every department can use the API of others to reuse software. So even it has some IT costs, diminishes the IT cost, because now I stop replicate software, I reuse software via these different APIs, right? So also because APIs are open by design, they are secure, but they are self-service. They have self-service. It's like a menu of a restaurant. You read and you order what you want, but now with software. It also makes teams autonomous. You don't have to ask for specific authorization for an export of a database to be sent you by email or by FTP or whatever. Now humans are a lot more autonomous when they want to interact with others. So that enables also this autonomous ability to pull data from a system to another. So discoverability, zero cost or almost of integration, reusability, and the autonomous integration are really the key internal benefits of an API mindset. But externally too, is the same idea. If I have a piece of software and I want to deliver it and sell it to thousands or millions of companies outside, I need to really integrate that my APIs needs to be well designed, well secured, but also available for other companies to implement directly my technology, right? And this is what companies like Stripe or Twilio or ADN or PayPal or Braintree or so many Algolia for search have done. They have done they say, okay, instead of reusing software inside your company you may not have, you can use software from another company directly via its API, and you integrate it in the same way. It's discoverable, it's autonomously integrable, it's highly documented to make it at zero cost of integration. And so like that, you can now export your capabilities to others directly via APIs. That makes this programmable economy. So this API mindset is understanding that when the cost of integration goes to zero, you achieve your maximum capacity of reach internally or externally. And even if you are not the best at the time, people will still integrate you, because now it costs so much to integrate technologies that integrating someone or a technology that is almost cheap or free to integrate because it's so easy, it's a competitive advantage compared to a technology that is maybe better, but that's it longer to integrate. And I will just finish with this metaphor. Is the difference between when you go for lunch and the best place that does the best food is at 2 miles away. So you have to take your car, spend half an hour walking to go there. And there's a long waiting line, but it's the best. It has the best food, it has everything. But at some point, most of the time you will go to this close place to your office because it's easy, it's fast food, it's self-service, and you can go back to your office faster. So it's not in a world where the cost and time is money and the cost of integration is high. Being integrable and being, let's say, easy to implement has sometimes more value than being the best and having all the features, right? And so this is the same idea, is that the Stripe and the Twilio companies at the time were not the best, or even Amazon Web Services at the time were not the best, but they were the most easy to consume, the most simple and easy and fast to consume, to have the fast return on investment. And over, they grew to add more features, and now they're the best, right? So be the first to be integrated, then be the best. You will be the best after. But the more important is that people integrate with you. This is the API mindset.
Yeah, and thank you for the history, because it really explains how things used and what kind of problems we've come to solve. And I think the metaphor you used in the end perfectly sums it up. It also has to do, I think, with one of our previous episode talked about the developer experience. So when it's easy for someone to use your product, yeah, I think that the features will come to later on. Definitely, all you have to do is make sure that it's something that it's easy to adopt and helps solve a problem you're having.
Yeah, like in a restaurant, the more important is people sit at the table and begin to order. Now they're with you, and then they're with you. So the more important is to be sure you onboard people, right? And to be sure they know and they're at the right time in the right place to be able to learn about you and wait for the features, right? So yeah, onboarding is extremely key, and you can do that by lowering the cost of integrating your API, right? But some psychologists often compare it with, when you have automatic stairs, automatic elevators, right, or stairs, right? At some point, if your body, your mind check the quantity of energy you will need to go with the classic stairs or automatic stairs, and at some point, depending on how far they are, you will choose one versus the other, right? Because we're lazy and we love automatic stairs compared to classic stairs. But if the automatic stairs is really far away, and you begin to think that the energy cost to go to the automatic stairs then to use it is a lot higher than just doing the stairs that are in front of you, you will use the stairs that are in front of you. So be as close as possible to the customer to show that it will cost the lowest energy possible to integrate with you.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I have to say, I love your analogies because they make everything so clear. It's good to have them. So what do you say are the benefits for those who adopt this mindset?
So the benefits, it's internally, the benefits are, first, it's agility, right? The ability to ship software and expose it in a way that's consumable by others directly. Instead of having complex systems, now you have one interface that exposes what you are able to do, that also hides what you don't want to expose, right? So that's APIs are as much as hiding as exposing interface. But agility, because once you build something, you can expose it to others directly. And in agile methodology, they often say that if you want to build a car, build a scooter, but then build a motorbike and then build a car, because you have to always build something that works, right? But that evolves over time. Now with APIs, before building the final applications, you will begin to build every building brick and expose it via an API. So even if the application takes 6 months and 1 year to be built, every 2 weeks, all the capability you build, you will expose them by APIs to even others in the company. So you make the return on investment of software faster and across the whole company. So agility really in one of the first steps. The second step is reusability, because internally, when you expose things that are able to be reused by others, you avoid the replication of software, right? So you save some IT costs, right? And the third one is often what they call business breadth, the ability of the business to understand what the IT teams build and what the IT teams does. And so at some point, the business now, instead of looking for product outside the company, they will understand what their IT teams actually delivers. It will be not a service called MS1235X, whatever. It will be, for example, digital signature API, right? So now it makes complete sense. My company built a digital signature API that I can use in my applications, internal applications, or payment API, or SMS API, or customer validation API, or whatever, right? So it makes sense if you begin to think in the API. So the business can understand, and as we say, business breadth, there's ability to have a lot more understanding of what's coming, and so more options internally to build and faster instead of always requiring to do with third parties. On the external side, APIs have the ability to have an outstanding reach, because with the same API, you will deliver customers on anywhere in the world, or every type of clients, can be web clients, mobile clients, IoT clients, or whatever. And you can be integrated in any third-party platforms, right? So the reach externally, the reach is great. And the last thing, which is also a huge benefit externally, is that you let the customer do the work. It's exactly like IKEA. IKEA send you furniture, but you have to make the building yourself. And it's great because they don't have to assemble all the furnitures. They don't take the risk of transport. They don't take the risk of assembling furniture that you may not like. They just sell you by piece, then you assemble yourself. This is what makes the IKEA business model great. With APIs, it's exactly the same. You have capabilities, you have many building blocks in your company, you expose to others by APIs, but they need to come to your portal, integrate your API and take your resources and build the way they want. So as a company, you take less risk building UIs and building applications that people may not want, or because it's really hard now to compete on the UI and the application. Let's say real estate on mobile phones, for example, it's really, really hard. But if you just give the resources, the API, the capabilities, the application developer will come and integrate to them. So you take more risk and you have a lot more reach, and you do actually less work to reach the final market, right? Because it will be the developers who takes the risk of building UIs and building applications in a highly competitive market, but they will come to you and do the last mile to the customer, right? But you have a producer approach, supplier approach, and you deliver to everybody. So that's really an important part. And this is what we see with companies which call infrastructure APIs. So all the cloud companies, they don't care about what you do, they just provide you cloud capabilities. Stripe payment APIs, they don't care about what you do, they do the payment service that enables you to integrate. That's a huge return investment for companies to be able to deliver just the capabilities, but not take the risk of the market.
Yeah, I think the benefits, as you said, them are pretty clear, and even looking at it both from the software side, but also from the business side. You have a project that's agile, reusable. As you said, the business breadth also is of key importance, especially as technology progresses and people trying to understand how all the departments are working and what they're working on, and also the outstanding rates and letting customers do the work. Yeah, I think they're also very key. Now we're talking about APIs, and APIs are built by developers and also for developers. So how would you say is the API developer unique? Do APIs define a specific skill set that the developer should have?
So yeah, it's a small fight I'm engaging with in the last 10 years is recognize the APIs as a skill set and a mindset and a skill set for developers. A lot of developers, and you know that better than anybody with your data /data, but recognize themselves as front-end developers, back-end developers, or mobile developer, or desktop developers, or and sometimes they say AI developers. So every time they try to match it with a specific set of technologies, can be the programming language. Oh, I'm a Java developer, or .NET developer, or C# whatever. And yes, so every time developers refer themselves in terms of communities, but what we found at APIdays is that actually some developers find themselves to be API developers. They feel that the work, the craft of designing APIs, building APIs, testing and developing and deploying APIs, and then monitoring APIs is a skill set that needs to be attached to a specific word, which is not front end, not back end, not whatever, but to be API developers, right? Knowing REST, representational state transfer, knowing GraphQL, knowing gRPC, for example, knowing OAuth, the authorization protocol, right? For example, knowing specific like OpenAPI specifications, knowing how to build APIs, knowing HTTP is a skill set that some developers recognize themselves in, which is to be an API developer, right? How to write documentation, because developers sometimes don't like to write documentation most of the time, but some developers do. And yes, doing great documentation, monitoring APIs. I even seen a community called API Ops. It's like a DevOps, but just for APIs, right? Just for the APIs craft, the APIs mindset. So they call themselves API Ops, right? So yeah, this is why this unique skill set, which is a little bit of front end, a little bit of back end, a little bit of distributed system, a little bit of security, right? But gather into something that I call, and what we call in the community, like API developers. And with APIdays, we have a community of 150,000 people, right? And so for the developers in it, like 40%, they recognize themselves as API developer, right? So yeah, so this is why I fight and I promote the idea of API developers as a specific segment, because we see them at APIdays over the last 8 years, and they're still there. It's not specific technology, because technology evolved, but we still need interfaces. So it's people working in interfaces of software. Yeah. So this is what I think about why API developers should be a segment in your next studies at /data.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely great, and given the uniqueness of the API developers, makes perfect sense. For someone to see them as a segment of their own. Where do you think is the untapped potential of the API market?
The untapped potential of the API market is in many places, but really you have two layers, right? Either the tooling, so building tools for helping others to build APIs or deploy APIs or monitor or test APIs, right? So there's still a lot of room there. With the appearance of last year's of OpenAPI specification and API descriptions format that helps to describe APIs in a machine readable way, there you can automate a lot of tooling, right? And many companies are trying to tackle that, but there is a huge opportunity there. And also in the GraphQL world, especially because the tooling is newer, and developers actually love GraphQL also. So there is a huge opportunity there to build tools. On the other side, there is an opportunity to call what I call API as a product, or what some investors call infrastructure APIs, right? So these APIs that does one capability, one business process as a service, but they do it in a way that is so easy to implement that any company in the world can just do like some few API calls to add the capability into their system, right? So that's an important opportunity to build APIs as a product, like payments or telecom or search engines or specific data, or all these specific capabilities, right? Or facial recognition or machine learning. When you don't know a capability, but you can add it, send data to a platform that send you data back and that does this capability for you. That's what people call this an API as a product, or what we call infrastructure APIs. And maybe I would add just the last one: companies who build APIs all on top of legacy systems, on old systems. For example, some really great companies are doing APIs on top of all the old legacy hotel chains and systems. So like that, when you will need to interact with one hotel chain, when you make an app, you will just use their API and they will manage the backend system, let's say, issue with whatever hotel. This idea of write once, run forever. You write codes just once with an API company, but that handle all the connections behind the scene with all the hotel chains. In the case of hotels, with all banks, if it's the case of banks. And this is why Plaid has been acquired $5 billion recently. They are just one API to connect with all the banks, right? All the banking systems, all the legacy bank systems. So this ability of APIs to be an exposing interface, but also a hiding interface that hide all the mess, because you just see the interface. Yeah, it's a great capacity. And you will understand it if you understand the API mindset. The API is the menu of the restaurant. It's not how the kitchen is designed. It doesn't tell you sometimes the name of the chef. It doesn't tell you what are the appliances. It just tells you what you can order and what you can give to the waiter, right? And if you really understand that menu and hiding and exposing capability, you can find all the business opportunities that are attached to the API mindset.
A lot of opportunities there, a lot of things that can be done. Do you think this is where the future is going to? How do you see the API landscape evolving in the future?
So the API landscape will evolve, as I said, into two parts. The tooling will be wider, and the tooling also will be more segmented. Now there will be more space for just features to exist, right? I see, for example, API mocking companies, right? So they just do mocking, which is a one tiny part of the API full life cycle. But now there are more and more companies and enough developers who are into this API industry that, now you can have 100,000 users just doing one mock-up API company, right? Or one testing API company, or other stuff like that. I even see some companies backed by Y Combinator who are just one API governance tooling, just to know if you respect the company guidelines. So it just check if the APIs that are built respect the company guidelines, right? Which is extremely tiny. So first, the API landscape will see more and more fragmentation into the tooling, right? So tools will do less, but they will be a lot more specialized, right? And on the infrastructure and API as a product side, actually the landscape will completely explode, right? The landscape will completely explode because of more and more companies will try to develop some business process as a service to be integrated with more and more other companies, right, into this high fragmentation. Exactly like the car industry has been, or any kind of industry in the industrial revolution. We've been to a lot more fragmented supply chains, right, that work together. Everybody is highly specialized and do one thing. And so we are doing it the same way, but not in a supply chain, but let's say in digital supply chain, where companies, actually, this is what I call the axiom of the API economy. So more and more companies will expose their capabilities directly via APIs. right? As we were saying, I have capabilities, I expose them to others, internally or externally, to reach my maximum market capacity. But on the other side, more and more companies will begin to integrate other companies' capabilities via their APIs. So I call it the B2B sharing economy. It's an API economy. It means that I will expose what I do the best to others, but I will integrate via APIs, but I will integrate what others do the best via their APIs. So I have one APIs out, but many APIs in. And every company will be like that, right? I deliver one, I integrate many to build my one product, I expose my product. That will be one of many of someone else, right? When I do just a payment service and via an API, I'm just do one thing. I maybe use 100 APIs as an input. I just have one output. But this output is one of 100th of another company that just use payment and others as an input to build an output. So this is really how the landscape will evolve.
Yeah, that's definitely a future that we're all looking for. Seems like there'll be a lot of progress coming in also when these things are implemented the way you said it. I know for sure that listening to you and us going through this chat in this episode leaves me wanting more. So I look forward to API Days. Will you tell to our listeners why API Days is a must-attend event?
API Days today is the main series of APIs event of talking about the technical challenges of APIs, but also the business challenges of APIs, including also the governance aspect, between how humans interact with technology in an organization. So we do that in 8 countries every year. We gather all the API experts, book authors, creators of tooling or protocols, or the people implementing it every day, head of APIs or CIOs of companies with a strong API strategy. So if you understand API mindset, or if you want to understand the API mindset, API Days is definitely the series of conference you want to attend and listen from others, and also network with others and meet other people that may help you in your industry or in other industry that face the same problem as you, right? So you can check all next conferences on APIdays.co, APIdays.co, and probably there is an API conference every time in the year that you can attend to, mostly because now all our conferences are at least have an online version. So you can listen to the talks and participate in the community. So in that sense, if you are an API, if you're interested in APIs, or if you work with APIs, this is definitely a conference to attend to.
I can tell you for sure that here at /Data, the whole team is looking forward to it, to Interface. Will you tell our listeners about the dates?
So our next event will be our global online event called APIdays INTERFACE. As you were mentioning, it will be June 30th and July 1st, 2 days with 3 time zones, and for whatever you are in the world, you will be able to follow the event. Yes, so and you can find on APIdays.co/interface for the next event. We have other events coming in the year, but the next big one is APIdays INTERFACE, where you will be with 3,000 other API practitioners live.
Mehdi, it's been great talking to you. I think we had a great chat here, and everything you said was very insightful in helping us understand the API market or the landscape. If our listeners want more from you, how can they reach you?
They can follow me on Twitter, Medjaoui, Medjawii, right? You can follow me on Twitter, or they can reach me at Mehdi at APIdays.io, MEHD comme Delta, MEHDI at APIdays.io, and I would be glad to engage with them and discuss with them and tell them how they need to know more, or where they can find more resources about APIs.
Perfect. It's been great having you, Mehdi. And for our listeners, thank you for listening to Under the Hood of Developer Marketing, the podcast devoted to developer marketing and relations. You can listen to all episodes, 5 free resources, and the latest news at democratize.com. And you can subscribe to our bite-sized bi-weekly digest or follow us on Twitter at /DataHQ. Thank you very much, Mehdi.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Statis.